Hi guys, Ryuu here from Blender Bros with another video, and in this one we're gonna be talking about progression, about how you can progress and how quickly can you progress from a beginner to intermediate and, past that. So I'm going to be using works by one of our members on the coaching and community on blenderbros.com, and his name is Saud Afridi, and we're going to be looking at his works when he joined, the very first ones like this one, and something that's been produced, very recently, like this month or last week, whatever. And we're going to see a clear progression, and you can see that, first of all, it's really possible to progress quite quickly and improve, and also if you have a proper guidance, you can just progress in the right direction, so to speak, okay? So, this image was one of the very first ones that we've seen, and this is based on our course that's available through the membership. It's Scout 7 Canon, and, this render has a lot of issues, right? There are multiple issues. Lighting is one of them, basically. There's it's not really a lighting, but it's a reflection, and that's a problem because, it draws a lot of attention for no good reason. So let me just grab a different color and I'll show you what I mean. Right, so we got this reflection here, which is a problem. And the rest of the gun, of the cannon, is in absolute shadow. You can clearly see that there is no separation here between the, between the cannon and the background. There's a complete merger of the cannon shadows and the background, and it's very difficult to determine when the cannon starts or when the background starts. So that's the problem, right? Lighting is somewhat spilled in here. Everything else is in complete darkness. And another problem is that there is not enough standing space for this cannon. There should be probably somewhere here to give it proper ground. Always give your models proper ground to stand on. This is really important. It's like shooting someone, a person, and cutting off their feet, or cutting off their shoes. It's just not gonna work. And also the cannon is in the middle of the frame, which is a typical mistake of beginners, which everything is in the frame because that's where I want to see it, in the middle, and this renders a lot of frame unimportant. So that's how basically almost everyone starts, okay? But then when you jump to the image that's been sent to us a week ago, this is a completely different story, okay? Now this image is much more recent, it's about a week old, and you can clearly see the progression. There's a really nice separation in terms of lighting, very good light on the object itself, there are no reflections, and there's also light on the scale, which is cool. Nice post-processing, and the positioning of the object is maybe not perfect because you can see it's floating in the air, I'm guessing because of the cable. Another thing is that we got some light spills here, and here, so that's a bit problematic, and also it's a bit too centered still, okay? I would move it here somewhere, right? So this object should be moved more or less maybe to this, this area. Other than that, this is really cool. Details are becoming a bit more toned down, decal placement's a bit better, so it starts becoming a bit more tucked in, but again, this is either very stylized sort of a modeling or simply done by someone who still hasn't grasped the importance of scale. But it's way better than the original image. Now, if I show you some stuff in between we've been receiving, that's been 2001, I think, as well. Classic example of a problem with depth of field, where everything in front is blurry, and actually this whole image is blurry, to be honest. And decals are being just slapped without any thought all over this model, used as mid details, which is not a good thing to do. Whereas here in the last image, you can see that they're properly placed and they're just becoming secondary details, not tertiary, but secondary. So it's it's way better than in this image. Lighting here is all over the place. You got two different colors of light as well, which is very difficult to control, so I would avoid it. And again, the blurriness of the whole image is a bit of a problem. Now this is far more interesting, but there is a lighting problem here. Although the model clearly faces to the left, if you're really carefully watching the handles, right? Because the handles, there's a seat, which means someone sitting here will be facing this way, which means this is the front of the vehicle and this is the back. But because the lighting falls on the back, we kind of think subconsciously that this is the front, and that's the problem. This is why the framing is good, but the lighting is incorrect. The lighting should be falling from this side, okay? So if it was me, I'll be casting light from this side or from the back and simply tone down this entire light here, you know, just reduce it, right? So the light focus should be here. This should be sharp, and you know, the whole object basically should be sharp. So you know, this is already falling out of focus, which is not the greatest thing to do. But the, you know, interesting toning, interesting background, really nice volumetrics, but you know, still having the right lighting problem. This is an interesting one because the original one, if I'm gonna show you, was actually really tucked into the right hand side of the image, so completely you know, should be basically framed like this, but this one is much better, although still it's in the middle, and also you can clearly see that there's a decal placement and use, you know, not there yet, but the model is kind of cool. It's a cute stylized, you know, kind of a tonk or tank, so pretty interesting. Then we see some more newer stuff, like this is, for example, 2022, and we can clearly start seeing that there is a proper framing, lighting cast from the front. This lighting here on the side is a little bit, you know, toned down. There's a really nice highlight on details, a lot of shadows, which means light is at the angle, which is good. Still incorrect placement of decals, but you know, at least the lighting and composition is fixed. There is a scale reference, which is really good, and there is a nice space here, you know, towards which this person is pointing, space for some signatures, some logos, etc. So really cool. Still not, you know, perfect in terms of control of lighting, because we got spills here in the back, but this is way better than, you know, than this image, right? So if you compare these two, you can see the progression, and that's only within a few months, you know. Then we have another example which is kind of similar. You know, I would be careful with reusing the same sort of a pose and character in multiple images unless it's the same model. But again, lighting is pretty decent, and you know, everything is lit and visible. Another example of some newer models by Saud, and this is an interesting one because it's like two-in-one image really. You got two objects, but they're not really connected. They're not really communicating with one another in the frame because they are of more or less the same importance. This one is a little bit more lit, but to be honest, they have the same size, and they on the first plan, which is not something I would do. I would do it a bit differently. I would just simply back off and sort of put one of them a little bit deeper in the frame, and I can show you an example here. So one of them would be this example here, where you got this. This is a good example, right? You got two objects, but one of them is blurred in a second plan, but it creates depth, which is important. And another good example would be this ship here, this one of these images, this one, okay? It's the same type of an image, right? When you got the secondary identical model, but you know, different angle, and it just is in the back, and it's, you know, rendered less important, which is this how I would approach this. And also the framing then, because you need to think which one is your main one. If this is the main one, then the framing should be the other way around. It should be in here, because in this case it's exiting the frame. But if this one was, let's say, smaller and in the back and blurry, you can actually have it on the left hand side because it's unimportant. The important one would be this one, right? So what I would do, I would place it somewhere here, facing this way, make this one smaller, move it to the back and blur it, okay? That's what I would do. And then of course lighting is some work because, you know, this is really pulling attention, in my opinion. There are a lot of reflections, etc. But, you know, again, the decal placement is a little bit better because we can see that decals have been used as secondary and tertiary details, which is, you know, the way it should be. So this is becoming better and better. So going back to our last image, you know, which is, I think, is one of the best. You can clearly see the progression from, you know, from something extremely basic and sort of clueless, basically, to something a bit more intentional. Because, you know, when you don't know what to do, you can get lucky once in 20 times or 50 times, but that doesn't really mean anything. What is really important is to learn how to control your environment and do something intentionally and be able to reproduce that result in future renders. And that would mean that you actually have learned something. So that is clear indication for me that someone starts getting what it is about, and this is really important. So if we're gonna go to Blender now and look at this scene very quickly, I would show you very quickly how I would fix it. Okay, so first of all, when I opened this Blender, this HDRI here was actually, the strength of the background was unplugged, which is kind of interesting way to do things, because to be honest, if it was me, I would simply plug it in and reduce the strength of this if I was working in Eevee. And the reason for that is because if you go with 100% strength on your HDRI in Eevee, you will be losing contact shadows, so you don't want to do that. Okay, then secondly, the problem is the background. It's just massive. Okay, we don't need all this junk. You know, we are losing so much light because of it, because we simply are obscuring the light with surfaces that are completely, you know, and utterly useless because they're not in the camera. So what I would do, I would select all this junk here, okay, and simply remove it. So just let me select it very quickly, and you know, we can just delete it. So delete faces. This will technically grant you a little bit more control with light, because light's gonna start bouncing around. Also, we have really something very dark, like in this case. So, you know, the background is really dark and it doesn't reflect in the light. It's pure black, you know. Avoid going pure black, okay? Just go, you know, a little bit brighter so you can actually see the background. You do not really have to make a background black by simply going black in terms of color, but you can just drop the lights and move the background further away from the lights, which will basically become black. So instead of controlling the color, try controlling the lights. You're going to learn much more, and you'll see that you're going to get better results. Now, the lighting, like I said, is not ideal because, you know, if, for example, spills in the background over there. So what we do in this case? Well, in this case, what I would do, I'd move the background, you know, so I'll just move it backwards, right? So it's simply this background here is way too close. Or you could do is put some flags, meaning planes here with just black, you know, black color material, which will flag, sort of obscure the light falling on the background. But the easier way to do that, okay, will be just to scale this away like this, right, and move it further away. And you see that by doing this, I'm simply removing the light from the walls. You see what I mean? So this is how you do it, okay? And then you can manipulate with these lights separately. So this would be my advice. And this looks already far more interesting. Also, I usually avoid going with a background that is such a harsh angle. You know, it's kind of supple, but still harsh. What I would do instead is actually create, let me just show you, okay? I'm just gonna slice it with box cutter because it's gonna be easier, right? Like this. I'm gonna press K for knife, and I'm gonna delete all that, so faces, and you know, delete this. Let's just grab this edge here and GXX and move it in here, and then EZ and move it up. And then what I would do, I would GXX this, okay, and sort of tilt it backwards. So when I'm going to create a bevel here, it's gonna be much more supple, okay? It's going to be sort of, you know, semi, well, not semi, but kind of a infinite background, sort of fading away into nothingness. So when I'm going to go to my camera view now, right, and I'm going to rotate it properly so I can actually see that, and I'm going to move it somewhere here, right, and I'm going to scale that like this, right. And then we will need to cut this, you know, because the background is way too big. You can see now this sort of, this highlight here is kind of like fading gently into the background because the background is curving really nicely. So you can control your harshness of your shadows and highlights this way much better. Then you can add some more lights and create some more interesting, you know, environment here. We could add some volumetrics as well. I think it would be looking pretty cool. So you could add some principled volume here, even prepared probably is a little bit too strong. So let's go with 0.002 maybe. And we could create some bluish one just for the hell of it, okay? And we're gonna get some nice, you know, nice kind of a volumetrics in the background, right? And this will be far more interesting, you know, setup. And also, like I said, we need to move everything a bit to the left, which means we need to move the camera to the right. So let's just go with machine tools, lock it to view, hold, you know, middle mouse button and do something like this. And this will be far more interesting. You see, you just bunch this to the left hand side, the cable leads you into the image, and you have space here for logo or some kind of a text. And I think this will be a far more interesting render. So now let's see the settings here. Since we're using volumetrics, we want to change it to 2 pixels. It's going to be way better quality. We want volumetrics shadows, and of course we want high quality performance. Let's switch shadows to 4K. Hope this will not crash. Hybrid depth rest, and for sure. Under here, screen space reflections, what you want to do is want to swap these, okay? This will actually lower the quality of your image, the second one. So you want to do that. And then let's render this very quickly. So see what we're going to get. There we go. And looking really good. Let me just bring it to Photoshop very quickly, okay? So I'm going to bring it to Photoshop. Also, when you're saving something, my advice to you would be to actually go with TIFF, okay? Because it's going to be a better quality, right? Okay? Just saying. So you can see now that, you know, there's a difference between these two, right? We no longer have these spills here on the right-hand side. We have a bit of a spill here, but that's okay because you could put some logo here, which would be fine. Also, what you can do, you can actually darken it down by simply going to camera raw. If you have Photoshop, so you can go here to camera raw filter, and you can put some vignette, okay? So you could just go to effects, right? And you can just put vignette, which will take care of it. And so once you do that, you can remove it from everywhere else. So just, you know, you can add a mask here, right? You can just make it black and grab a gradient tool and simply, you know, obscure it with a gradient tool like this. And if you want to drop that, you could change it to soft light, for example. It's going to drop a little bit, you know, or just simply normal and then drop it, you know. Or you could change it to luminosity, which will affect brightness but not the saturation. So something like this, you know, just tone it down a bit, yeah, like this. Don't go too crazy. And then the attention immediately goes from here to the top, you see. Now the image in general is a bit dark, so what I would do is go to, where is it? Camera raw. And maybe bump it up a little bit. So go to basic exposure and just bump it up a little bit, okay? Open some shadows just a tiny bit and put some vibrance just for fun. Boom, so it's going to open the image, and now we could go to stuff like Color Effects Pro and put some contrast into it and make it a bit, you know, make it pop basically. I'll put some cross processing on it. We could add another filter and go with the Pro Contrast, which is fantastic, and, you know, pump it up a little bit here. Something like this, right? It's gonna kind of create a bit more uniform image all around. Boom, there you go. So you can see that you can improve your image with some very basic tools, and you can also see that there's no harsh reflections on your background here. There's a very smooth transition going deep into the image, as opposed to this one here when you have this harsh bevel, and there's going to be a reflection for sure, because if the light is above it, it's going to reflect. This is what causes reflection. That's why I would always recommend moving background further away. In addition to that, if you have a background far away, you can actually run with depth of field, and everything is going to be blurry in the background. So you could put some environment, some details in the background, and your model is going to be sharp and the background is going to be blurry. So this is how I would do it. You get some space for logo here and, you know, some space for logo here. Now, I'm not crazy about the difference in colors of the lighting. To be honest, I probably would be going with a uniform lighting here. If you know, if I was rendering this, because it's possible to, and it's actually advisable to create different colors of lighting in your image, because you can create depth with colors. For example, orange and warm colors usually are being seen first, so I would put it in the front plan, and something more cyan bluish I'll put in the background. But in this case, the problem is that our color is just kind of concentrated in the left-hand side. It's a really heavy pull because it's warmer than the blue one. So that's a bit of a problem. But, you know, It's not such a big deal. We could always actually colorize the front here. So watch this. What we could do is just sample the color from here. Maybe this would work. Create a layer, just run that and just change the color. There you go. And then what you could do is put a mask on it and run the gradient tool from the top, black one, like this, right? And you know, you can just basically cheat a little bit. Boom. So you can do so much with Photoshop. It's insane. You see how this fixed the problem? Now everything on the bottom is kind of warmish and everything in the back is bluish, and immediately this right hand side of the floor becomes important as well, even though there's nothing in here, because of the color pool, right? There's a uniformity on the floor, and you can see that there's a clear division between front and back, whereas here it's kind of all merging together. So you know, this simple trick, you can do some really interesting mind hacking. So anyway guys, if you're interested in learning, I would highly recommend our program, Blender Bros Coaching and Community. We have a lot of members, buzzing forum, and some really interesting perks. In addition, you are getting access to a shit ton of material to learn from, and of course you get access to the forum, on which we are quite active, and we always assist, you know, and try to help folks with whatever they need help with. So anyway, check it out, the link in the video description. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.